Please welcome our first session, Human First, AI Native, AI Strategies at Work in Multifamily and Finance, moderated by Peter Wang.
All right, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to eCore. It's actually my very first eCore. I gotta say, the number one thing that jumped out is the amount of food that from morning till night, you can never go hungry. First of all, thank you very much for being here. We are the very first AI panel here at this conference. And the reason I wanted to put this panel together specifically is for two reasons. One, AI is more relevant than ever. It's already here, it's real. And yet, in the last 6-7 months since we started building Haifa, I have talked to many folks who have questioned, how real is AI? How scary is it? Why should we start now? Are you sure it's better than ChatGPT? Right, the very common questions that many of us on the stage have experienced. And two, we also want to point out the fact that AI isn't just a productivity tool to make you more efficient on an individual basis. And I think everyone here on the panel believes that efficiency is just the very first stage of helping individuals. And then it's about how we collaborate as teams within the company, and then how do we transform the industry overall. And I'm very excited to be here. And actually, let me introduce myself real quick, and then we'll switch over to the panelists. My name is Peter Wang. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Haifa. My fellow co-founder, Simka, is in the audience. Many of you know from the industry. Simka, you want to raise your hand? There you go. We also have 4 other folks from the team joining us in the front. You want to stand up real quick? All right. This is our very first time coming to the conference, and we made a splash, right? Everywhere you see Haifa, hopefully, you don't walk out here. By the way, when I walk around later on, when I see you, I'll be quizzing you. What is Haifa? If you don't know it, no food for you. No, I'm kidding. But very excited to be here. What we want to do is kick off the introductions with the panel, starting with
Brendan Rosenblum. I work for Monticello Asset Management. We are a lender in the multifamily and senior housing space. I lead our asset management team and also our technology and data analytics team. We've taken a bit of a journey in terms of technology and analytics and automation. And I think around the same time, we started really spending a lot of time looking into AI tools. We got to know Peter, and we already had a relationship with Simka. But we've spent the better part of this year collaborating together on a couple of things. And, we think it's going to be very much a game changer for efficiency and automation within our organization and frankly, within the industry.
Awesome. Andrew?
Thank you. Pleasure to be here with everyone. Andrew Korn, I'm the CFO of Elise AI. Elise humbly was the first and is now the largest AI player serving primarily managers and properties in the multifamily and single-family housing space. Company was founded in 2017. Our first products automate communications between buildings and their prospects and residents. Started with the prospect side in a virtual AI leasing agent that handles leasing conversations and automates leasing conversations over phone, email, SMS, and web chat, then expanded to all resident communications. And so now here today, Elise AI can automate the full journey of communications between a building and its prospects and residents, expanding from there into automating other forms of labor at properties. So we have a new product that completely automates touring, AI-guided tours, do complete lease audits in an automated fashion to make sure that your buildings are charging consumers the right amounts, and expanding rapidly from there. We'll serve, by the end of this year, well over 5 million units across 700, 800 different customers in the space. So we're probably used at a building that you own or have interacted with in the not too distant past.
Christina.
Great to be here. My name is Christina Taramoto. I am the Vice President of Client Services for Cardinal Group. We are a customer of Elise and hopefully Haifa at some point in the future. We are a fully integrated shop, so we investments, development, management. We are about 60,000 units focused on student housing, multifamily, and build to rent. On my team, we spend a lot of time processing deals. We're doing a lot of underwriting, market analysis, looking at future rent trends, so all things I think will be really relevant in the context of this conversation, so I'm excited to be here with you all.
Awesome, thank you very much. Actually, one thing I want to point out, on the stage here on the right-hand side, we have much more as representing the capital side of the stack, and then on the left-hand side, we have folks representing the property side. And one of the reasons for that is we want to make sure that you guys understand that entire stack from capital to property has shifted from traditional software to AI native software. And I know Brendan's mentioned that we've been working with Monticello and a number of other design partners to transform the lending brokerage space within asset management. And from high perspective, we start at the ground because one of the things I realized very early on is that much of the inefficiencies, actually one thing we have a good saying inside Haifa is time kills deals, right? I know you guys are making a lot of deals here, you want to make more deals, but the number one thing that happens is time that keeps killing deals. And the question is, what's eating up your time? There's a lot of low leverage work, and we estimate probably 50% of what we do today could be low leverage work. We're talking about looking stuff in the email. Do we have the right documents? Do we have the right information? When is the last time we did this deal with this person? What do we negotiate on? And then we have moving into asset management space. How do we look at your portfolio and start your day efficiently, effectively? Say, okay, where should I focus on of all the things that I could do? And what we do is we aggregate and unify all of your data into one place to start, what we call single source of truth, and then building intelligence layers and execution layers on top, so you don't have to do the low leverage work anymore. So I guess one question I want to start with Brendan and Christina. The question of ROI comes up quite a bit, right, in terms of the AI. So how do you think about ROI from your perspective? How do you think of both in terms of return not just capital, but also the time horizon? Do you expect ROI within the first year, for 6 months? Or is it a long-term strategy you think about when you implement AI tools? Brendan, you want to start?
Yeah, I think when we think about our business, there's really two main areas that we think is right for AI. I think on the one hand, there's transactions that we've closed and how are we managing those transactions. And on the flip side, it's how do we speed to market in terms of getting back feedback on opportunities that we see with borrowers, with owners, operators, and so forth. A lot of that ultimately involves kind of the concept of data extraction and then data analysis. And so those are the areas that we've been heavily investing in from an AI perspective. Back to your question on ROE, we're really looking at this over the course of a far longer time horizon. So we're not working through these projects today on the basis that in 6 months or a year we're going to make that return back. But we're thinking about strategically over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, how could we ultimately reduce the amount of labor in our business, create better data and more accurate information more timely, and then ultimately make employees' jobs easier. So of course we're looking to get a return, but we think that return is kind of measured a bunch of different ways, and it's not so easy to quantify it in terms of dollars. And so we're looking at a longer time horizon. But even on an individual basis, there are things that we're working on today that we will know that will make our money back within a year or so if we could get it right using the AI solutions.
Yeah, okay, great. Christina?
Yeah, I think we're thinking about similarly, we do have our traditional ROI calculator when we look at any piece of technology, but I think we have a good understanding that the space is just moving so fast to understand the entire implication, and to slow down and be able to process that is going to impede our ability to actually implement the technology and move at the pace that the industry is moving at now. We look at it two ways. One on the corporate side, full-time employee, not, I want to say reduction, but not bloating the organization the same way we have historically. When you just look at the labor market right now and the inflation of wages, being able to process more through the existing team is certainly a focus of ours. On the property side, which is I think really where our partnership with Elise has been able to shine, we are looking at true FTE reduction on the payroll side. When you're underwriting a deal, payroll is usually the fourth largest category, the first on the controllable side. So where can we see an FTE reduction? And more than that, where can we actually see performance improvement? So with the application of AI enablements, centralized resources, and all of these things that we're doing, Are you able to see faster absorption, reduce your leasing and marketing, reduce turnover because you're able to focus more on the resident experience and less on administrative workflows? So I think we have a lot more data, at least on our portfolio through our partnerships that we have to date, on the actual performance improvement at the site level. And then obviously that will materialize at the corporate level as well, with less support needed to be able to do the same amount of deals.
One interesting question is that, Christina, you guys have a pretty large workforce overall, right? Was it 3,000 people?
Yeah, we're right around 3,000.
3,000 people, so that's a large workforce. When you guys started thinking about AI tools, how did you think about which part of the workforce you want to leverage AI tools first? Like how did you think about overall?
That's a great question. I had a pretty traditional and linear trajectory myself. Started as an analyst, moved up incrementally year over year. It's like you can write 300 investment memos before you're allowed to make a decision, like very traditional structure. And I think that kind of breaking some of that myopic thinking on what a level 1 team member is intended to do has been a real learning curve for us, but something that's really critical with the application of all of this new software. So I think we're really looking at, what things do I need to level up in my role, and then what needs to come off my plate to do that, and working our way down so that we're able to make better and faster decisions. Really looking at that level 1 workforce, analysts, associates, any of our on-site team members, and how can we get them out of the processing of data and compilation and move them faster to become critical thinkers and decision makers. And I think really that's where we'll see the effect on the larger organization.
Awesome. As Brandon, now your team is on a smaller scale relative basis. How big is your team?
About 80 people in the company, and my team is around 30 in the organization.
And then when you think about in your world, right, where there's origination, underwriting, asset management, how did you think about where AI can start to help?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we've been outsourcing to some firms overseas certain manual processes for about a decade or so. And so for us, it was a little bit different, where we just looked at that list and thought, okay, given we've been able to teach somebody else how to do this work, overseas, we thought it would be ripe for automation and for AI. So we took that list and kind of went down the list and realized, these are easy opportunities to ultimately outsource, to leverage AI.
I see, yeah. What's interesting, I think we're seeing over the last 20 years, we're seeing different ways of arbitraging talent, right? Globalization was one of those. Literally, I can trace back the countries where you start to have offshore teams, onshore, then offshore, then nearshore, et cetera. But what's interesting with AI tools, actually what we start seeing is AI tools being deployed onshore within the teams in the United States, for example, is starting to reduce and perhaps even eliminate the use of offshore teams over time. And I think that trend is going to continue to accelerate. People often talk about how AI tools are not perfect, which is 100% true. AI tools are not perfect. But on the flip side, humans are not perfect either. And the way we have dealt with human errors is by having numbers of approvals, adding numbers of memos, et cetera. And that actually does not scale. And AI can do much better in reverse by teaching agents that remembers forever, then actually speed up the execution. One thing actually I want to switch over to Andrew on your side. You're on the builder side. So we talked about how you guys have deployed AI in different areas. When Elise AI started, because Elise AI is how many years old?
It's 8 years old, 2017.
8 years old, and by the way, congratulations on the latest round of funding, $250 million.
Excuse me?
How much was the funding?
$250 million.
Right.
Andreessen Horowitz, Bessemer Ventures led the round.
It's great, right? A-listers.
Yeah.
Maybe take us back a little bit. How did you guys start tackling the prop tech market? Because it is fairly large. You could start anywhere. How did it start? Maybe give us a couple chapters.
It started with a couple of visionary customers who were willing to work with us. So Minna and Tony are our two co-founders. They started the company in New York in 2017. Built a prototype, literally started with the Yellow Pages, an online version of the Yellow Pages, calling up customers in New York. It took them until they got their first customer, a company called Stonehenge, a very great company based in New York City, and deployed us on a couple of properties there. And the aha moment was deployed on a few properties, 2 or 3 properties, called us back within 2 weeks and said, full portfolio right now, this has to work. This has to be done. It's working. And so being there where the product was built and the product worked and the product had been thought about functionally before that first customer was even landed was very key to getting that initial really positive signal. And then it required a couple other visionary companies, Avalon Bay and Equity Residential, both joined us right around the same time, late 2018, early 2019, participated in our seed round. And that's what really put us on the map. And it was a combination of two things. One is vision selling. We needed to articulate to people where we were going, and I can talk more about that. But at the same time, as I already said, like today, here is the improvement we are going to make on your business out of the gate. Yeah. And that was very important to us. And I think what they realized, going back to what my colleagues were saying before, is that having that tangible impact, there are a lot of jobs on site that are really not fun. You go survey your managers and ask, what is the turnover of on-site teams? I think you'll be surprised at how high it is. And one of the reasons for that is they're responsible for all sorts of things like answering the same question from a prospect for the 100th time, or collecting rent from people. Humans don't like to do that. No one likes to walk up to someone that they know or email someone that they know and see in the hallways and say, by the way, you're late on your rent, pay it to me. That's just really difficult stuff to do. And so, we believe that AI can, yes, we are automating away labor, but we're automating first those parts and those pieces that people don't want to do to begin with, and we make the job experience, yes, more efficient, but also better for those people.
That's amazing. What would you say, actually, let me just continue on that for a little bit. What is your next chapter at Lease AI?
It's continuing what I said before. We started with communications. We've now automated all those communications. We believe that it will be possible. I obviously think it's going to happen sooner than you do, but we believe it will be possible to have a fully automated building operations, and we're going to be the company that gets there.
Amazing. It's fascinating. You talk about the grunt work and no one wakes up wanting to collect rent from others or asking for documents. It's very similar on the capital side as well. Right? Even in the audience, I was just at ECAP West the other, 2 weeks ago. Similarly, we've talked with law firms, main insurance companies. They have a hard time trying to get people to get invoices, legal agreements sent to them versus where AI can actually go into their data stores and find the right documents, pull on the right information, presenting it, and even fill in the right forms. So no more memos. It needs to be written by hand. Then they can speed up the entire process. Now let's go back to one of the common objections that we often hear about, confusion in the AI space. We have the behemoths, right? ChatGPT, OpenAI, ChatGPTs of the world. That you guys, how many of you guys don't use ChatGPT? Oh, everyone do use. Okay. Anyone use Claude? No one use Claude? Yes, one in the back. Yes, Claude. Claude Code. Yes, Claude. What's interesting is I feel like I'm not sure you guys feel the same way. Each of LMs out there, they're not the same. As you can tell, there's certain approaches they do things. Like for example, for writing, I use Claude a lot more. I feel that it has a much more mature approach to reasoning and providing text. ChatGPT actually use a lot more for analysis for things. Quick question for maybe Andrew and me for all of us here is, when you think about AI tools, one typical question is, how is this tool even different than ChatGPT?
So I don't know, people may have seen there was a story in the New York Times probably a month ago now about how an individual was encouraged to commit suicide by one of these public-facing chat programs. And we work closely and partner with all of them, and they're great companies. So I don't mean it to disparage them. These are platforms that are having conversations across millions, tens of millions of people, and there are going to be these hallucinations. There are going to be these corner cases. But imagine that you were just taking your communications, or one of your properties was taking its communications with its residents and pumping it through that, and you happen to be the one where the model encouraged one of your residents to commit self-harm. Think about the impact that would have on your business. Think about the impact that could have on the industry. And that's why we believe those tools are exceptional. They're great for the right thing, but you cannot simply take them and do end-to-end automation. They need to be controlled. They need to be tailored. They need to be used in conjunction with internally developed models and guardrails, which is what we've done. And so we built this solution that, yes, leverages the best of the LLMs, but also does it in a controlled way based upon how you prompt them and based on how we've developed internal models. And we believe, for now at least, that's the way to approach this in a way that provides AI to our businesses that are regulatorily compliant, that's ethically compliant, and we think that's really important for sort of everyone in this room and everyone in this industry.
Okay, that's great. What about you guys? How can you guys use tools other than ChatGPT? What does ChatGPT not do for your business?
Yeah, I think on our side, we're really focused on tools that provide a specific output. I think that we've kind of tested the vendors that are able to offer full stack and stuff like that, and I think that we're really focused on specific parts of the business. So, for example, my team, due diligence is run through my team. I think that's an area where there's a ton of automation on books and records audits, a lot on the PCA side. So I think just the application of that, and we're really focused on vendors that can offer that specifically. So we're really breaking up the parts of the business and looking at where can we add automation to these processes to allow us to make decisions faster. Can we close faster? Can we shorten the due diligence window? And I think that as we look at future partnerships, maybe we'll expand more, but we found most success on groups that really have their core competencies and are focused on building that out versus the behemoth companies that are able to service every part of the business. Andrew and I were just actually talking about this. I do think that what is still innately human, that customer service component matters. So as we're looking at partnerships, where can we match our business plans? Where can we work with them more closely? So I think that's been a part of our strategy, is just really dialing on specific parts of the business.
Yeah, I think we kind of think about this in the same way maybe we would think about, hiring, an employee, right? There's a generalist approach, and people graduate college and have various skills and so forth, but we wouldn't just take anybody and throw them into a role with our organization. We're looking for some very specific skill sets and attributes and capabilities, background knowledge, and I think it's kind of the same thing with looking at an AI tool in a lot of ways. We're looking for something that's targeted on a very specific use case, and so there's a lot of very generic products that exist, including some of the large open source tools which could help, but they're not targeted enough. They haven't been trained the way that you need the tool to work for your business. And so, not finding an opportunity to go too far in scope wide and kind of get in and focus narrowly on some specific use case is kind of the approach we've taken, and we've seen that has proven more fruitful.
Yeah, I think that's actually very much echoes the way we think about HiFi as well. So there's one of our core principles is actually depth over breadth. We want to go deep inside specific industries first and build for very specific personas, whether it's underwriting, whether it's asset management. And those purpose-specific, industry-specific tools we find actually the most helpful as we work with design partners. And I would say actually in two other things I would say how a platform like HiFi, at least AI, will be different from ChatGPT's is concept of a knowledge base, right? For HiFi, we would tap into all of your unstructured documents over the course of your entire company and pull out specific information that matters to you. That centralized knowledge base is invaluable because then you're able to do things on top of it that you could not, patterns, benchmarking that you couldn't do before. And then beyond that, I think ChatGPT is great for grabbing information out of, let's say, offering memorandum, a few leases, et cetera. What it doesn't do is the execution aspect of it, right? For example, if you're looking to close a deal, one thing we're building is what we call tasks. And part of tasks is to build up multiple tasks for checklists, like closing items, 100 things that you need to close the deal. If we imagine you have a checklist right inside the platform to understand what it means to close this type of deal, and a subset of that checklist is able to be executed by AI. For example, looking for the right documents, pulling out information, knowing which documents are finalized versus redlined, and actually maybe able to ping folks who are, maybe need to get you information in the meantime as well. That kind of execution layer is, I feel like, the next frontier, so that AI is not just helping you to get information out, but using information for decision making, like Christina is saying, and then do things for you at the same time. Of course, with the safety that Andrew, you mentioned, right? The safety and compliance aspect of it is paramount. Okay, so let's switch over a little bit. Actually, maybe I'll zoom out for a second. Talk to LPs for a second. You guys, I know, Monticello, you guys raise money from other investors as well for your business. And just curious, do your LPs think about, ask questions about, hey, how is AI play in your business? How is that advantage for you? Does that come up at all in their consideration?
Yeah, in our business, I mean, we're raising capital consistently, and I think that tends to be a major focus of a lot of capital raising conversations these days. How are you using technology generally, and then specifically, how are you using AI? And I think on the one hand, there might be some investors that are nervous about it, so they want to understand ultimately what types of controls do we have in place. Are we just letting AI make investment decisions? The answer to that is of course no. But on the flip side, I think they view it really positively when you're able to explore the use of these tools, when your capabilities internally have the ability to manage some of the AI processes and implement technology that is leading. And so it is a big focus these days, and it seems to come up in many investor diligence conversations.
Yeah, I think on our side, certainly comes up. It's kind of, we've seen this with other things. It used to be, every DDQ said, do you have business intelligence? Yes or no, and then kind of the evolution of that, like what does it do? What are the outputs? So I think we're kind of middle of that process right now, where it is a qualifier. Do you use it? How do you use it? We haven't seen that many questions. I think it's kind of two ends of the spectrum. We work with LPs that are family office all the way up to the REITs and big institutions, and I certainly think the smaller groups have more hesitance around it. We will underwrite deals and show the impact of the AI application, and they'll take the underwrite and then gross it back up to what you would underwrite under a traditional model, because they just don't have a ton of faith in it yet. Conversely, when we're working with the larger institutions, that's essentially table stakes, is that you're underwriting a more efficient on-site operation. And so I do think we'll see a lot of that lag catch up on the smaller side. I think in terms of LP requirements, I think like business intelligence is now table stakes. I think it will head that way. I think we just have to prove out the use case, be able to show the actual impact on site, which Elise has been a great partner for us, to be able to get everybody comfortable with a more aggressive underwrite with the application of these processes.
What's interesting is I figure the technology portion of your budget is probably changing as well, right? The way you think about allocation of capital, from workforce to AI tools. I know, Brandon, you and I have conversations before where you had to think about which tools to test out, how much budget you shift over, and that has a lot to do with your margin, et cetera. Do you want to talk a bit about like how budget is shifted and how you think about that?
Yeah, I would say typically over the last 5 years or so, we've kind of contributed about an extra 5 to 10% of our budget in technology costs. Yeah. I think this year we're probably on track to be more in the 20 to 25% range, primarily because we've thrown a lot at the wall to see ultimately what sticks when it comes to using AI tools. And I think we've been exploring with partners like yourselves, with other consultants, with vendors, and I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. I think, going back to what we've discussed, there are a lot of things that are just too wide and would take too much of our time to ultimately implement, and then there's tools that are more targeted, and those tend to be the ones that we're moving ahead with today.
Actually, maybe one other question is, how do you decide between what you build in-house? You talked about having consultants building, right? We heard folks maybe using Microsoft Teams and others, right? Come in and say, hey, you guys use Office 360 already. Why don't you build with us for next year? How do you think about building? How do you think about buying? And how do you think about partnering? Like, how do you think, maybe it goes to Christina and Brendan.
Yeah, so at Cardinal, we do have a full data and AI team. Certainly we are building stuff in-house. As it relates, I think, we talked about this earlier, but just kind of core competencies. Our core competency is not a technology company. Our core competency is being able to service the real estate and drive value at the property level. So what enables us to do that? If we don't think we're best suited to build that in-house, certainly we partner. Andrew mentioned the regulatory environment and any sort of risk aspects. Obviously, there's a lot around data sharing and antitrust issues and stuff like that. And I think we really look at partnerships on that side. We just formed a partnership with Hello Data to pull down any publicly available data from websites, be able to syndicate that into our BI environment and visualize it for our teams. That's something where we really looked and said, hey, this is something that I think that a partnership would benefit us more. They're able to keep up with the regulatory risk, be able to move faster than we could. So I think that's really important for us. On the buy side, we haven't bought anything yet, but I think that's certainly an option if we think it is something that the infrastructure already exists and we're able to enable it better through our platform. But I'd say we're pretty limited on what we're actually doing in-house. Again, that's just not our core competency, and so what enables us to do what we do best is where we're looking at partnerships.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And maybe Andrew wants to.
Yeah, I sorry to interrupt. This is obviously going to be very self-serving, but just to give you a sense, we today have about 70 people, plus or minus, purely from an engineering, data science, and machine learning, artificial intelligence perspective that we employ at Elise AI. So that is the type of resource that we are throwing against these cutting-edge technologies and building the tool that we're building. We have now tens of millions of conversations that we have had with consumers over time, and those conversations form the training data that we use to make our tool that much more efficient. I respect and have the utmost respect for anyone who wants to build, for anyone who wants to do things themselves. But the honest question, I would ask yourself, to the point you made, is that the type of investment that I want to make? Is that the expertise that I want to build, that I want to have? Because that truly is the level of investment that it requires to build something.
Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting is I remember having a conversation with you about, right, and I think about you guys building yourself. There is probably a broader strategic questions that I feel like if you guys have a firm of a sizable, right, book, et cetera, and team and budget, think about how the allocation is going to change over time, what type of workforce you need, but also the tech stack. What is your future tech stack? And this is something you and I discussed quite a bit, right? Because in many ways, and I would say my philosophy is you want the simplest tech stack as possible. You want a few large pieces versus many smaller pieces that you need to integrate together. That's also why we decide to go deeper versus wider. So you can cover, it's like a single platform like ours, can cover multiple aspects of your business versus just a single one. I know you guys use Snowflake on your side as a single data lake, and talk about how Haifa and Snowflake can be the two primary operating systems within a firm like Monticello. And that's become very powerful and eliminate a lot of the integration costs. And every time you integrate something, there is going to be potential problems between systems talking to one another, what file formats, little things like that. One thing you guys also brought up is what's your core competency and the DNA of the company. So I guess I have two questions, but I'll start with the first one. First of all, I feel like you guys' roles have changed a little bit. I'm talking about at least Brendan and maybe Christina. Previously, you probably didn't have to think about technology so much, right? Now you're all of a sudden, I know you're interviewing like data scientists and other roles you never had to interview before. Tell me about that journey. How did you get comfortable to say, okay, we need to get these new folks onto the platform, interview those, like the talent aspect of it?
Yeah, so I think, historically, we've strategically always purchased licensed software products from various, institutions who have demonstrated capability and core competency in that space. I think over the course of the last couple of years, we still want to be in that position, but we need to have the right level of resources who are going to be able to help kind of custom design product that's going to fit our business.
Yep.
And so we've gone out and we've hired a bunch of individuals. 2-3 years ago, we had a technology organization of 1 or 2 people. Today, we've sort of tripled, that team. And so we're interviewing for folks, not so much to build the product, but to help design it to fit our needs, working with various, partners and specialists in the space.
How about you, Christina?
Yeah, so we largely service student housing, and I think if you distill down any aspect of multifamily, you have to have a resident base, and we have a lot of exposure to the next generation of renters. And I think if you look at the habits that student housing renters have, that's going to inform the next generation of multifamily renters, and they're so tech-enabled. I think we just pulled a bunch of data about where they're querying stuff for the first time from ChatGPT or Gemini or some sort of LM, and I think that has to inform how we're making decisions and how we're operating on our side. And so really, I don't know if it was as intentional of a decision as we've always been very forward-focused and tech-enabled, because that is the resident base that we're serving. And we have to meet them where they're at. I think I'm generalizing, but college kids, would pretty much do anything not to talk to a person in some sort of transactional thing like finding an apartment. And we've seen a lot of success with Elise, and that we offer them options on meeting them where they want to be met. They want to tour after hours. They want to be able to talk to somebody that's not going to, seem inconvenienced, and just little things that I think really inform the next generation of renters. So that's how we've been able to stay up front on technology, is we have, hundreds of thousands of students nationally that are informing how we make decisions.
Interesting. Yeah, you guys are very specific. The student housing is actually probably an advantage for you guys too, because you've seen the next generation. One thing we definitely are starting to see on our side within Haifa, we're 7 months old, we're 15 folks on the team, about to double within the next quarter, is this like AI native kind of workforce coming into, right, whether it's college kids and stuff. And this AI native, I joke about how the AI native folks are not Excel native, right? Because we had this whole generation of analysts and associates that grew up on Excel, and this is the way they think about data, is through Excel sheets. And when we showcase like Haifa to, like, for example, your associates and others, they have aha moments like, okay, this is how we should do financial spreading. This is how we should be looking at data. Here's how you get information out of documents. Here's how we should be asking questions. Here's how we should formats without going to, this is how we build dashboards with natural language instead of, doing 200 different settings to get the dashboard just correctly right. So my question to you guys is, how do you think about this AI native workforce coming into your, as you're recruiting folks? And maybe a related question to that, those AI native workforce, maybe using AI native tools, they won't go through the traditional associate analyst kind of, the journey that you guys went through. How do you train them to be more, like, better critical thinking, right, throughout? Because a lot of times you learn how the business works by doing the grunt work from the beginning. So how do you, who do you recruit type of people, and how do you train them to be ready in this AI age?
Yeah, I think we've not shifted the hiring methodology too significantly to this point. But I think, you think about a specific use case that affects us. Our team is responsible for reviewing appraisal reports on properties that we think about financing, acquiring, and so forth. There's maybe, 10, 15, 20 data points in an appraisal report that's relevant for a lender, for an investment manager. The reports are several hundred pages long, and historically you've had an analyst who's had to kind of go through each individual report, pull out the relevant data, capture it in an Excel file or a template to put it in a database or a credit memo and so forth.
Yep.
And so we've employed a lot of analysts who are very capable of doing work like that. I think through the use of AI tools and just being able to drop the file into an AI model and have it return the information that's relevant, I think, that's eliminating the need for that type of skill digging through documents. And what it's allowing the team ultimately to do is to spend more time thinking about the value and the relative value of that individual transaction, less time aggregating data, more time understanding and interpreting the information that's ultimately pulling out. And that's what we've always wanted our team to be doing. We don't want people to be data entry robots. We want them to be really thinking critically about the investment opportunity and whether these numbers make sense. And so that's how the team has kind of been embracing the tools.
Okay. How about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, our workforce, ourselves, is very young and AI native. I think this goes back to what I was saying before when you think about the property level. We should all think critically, whether it's at the property level or at the level you're working on. What are the things that we ask people to do because they're actually important to the business versus what are the things we ask people to do because we had to do them, and whether we're conscious or unconscious about it, there's some sort of, well, you're going to have to go through the same pain I went through. And we shouldn't be doing the latter. And I think there's a lot of that. And I think if you think critically about the jobs, the tools that AI can automate, many of them just simply don't. There is not no person should need to actually do them. There's no reason for a person to do them, and we should automate those, and we should be really critical about that and not be fearful of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is an anecdote, but when we would hire analysts historically, one of their first tasks is we would have them build our pro forma. So rebuild it, and really just to be able to follow the logic of how the pro forma is structured. And I hired a new analyst recently, And I was like, all right, like big task, this is gonna take all week. And he gave it back to me in like 30 minutes. He's like, here you go, and by the way, like there was an error on sensitivities in like year 12 or something. And my like mind nearly exploded. I'm like, you know, how did you do this? But I was like, I just threw it into Gemini, converted it to Sheets and sent it back to you, and kind of walked me through it. And so I think that was just kind of a lesson in just how we have to adapt how we're looking at the skill sets of those team members. You know, in my mind, I'm like, if you can't build the pro forma in Excel, like how could you learn anything? And that's just a very, I think, antiquated way of thinking about it and just having to adapt very quickly. I think that's the challenge with AI is how quickly these things have happened and being able to adapt. You know, his highest and best use isn't being able to track the logic of every cell in a very complex pro forma. It's going to be how are we processing that information more clearly? How is he able to bring decisions to me faster? And so I think that was a good lesson for us just in what the future of the workforce will be, and really rewriting those job descriptions of our level 1 team members to be able to be, you know, critical thinkers faster than we have seen historically.
That's a great point. You know, what's interesting, one thing we definitely observed within high-file world is that by using AI tools, we see, right, there's AI slop that came out of it, and then people who we asked about their work, they don't really know what's in there. It's like, I don't really know what's in there. But the reverse is that the good AI native workforce is they tend to plan ahead, meaning they start the conversation with the agents not by like, do this for me, but saying, I have this objective, I have this intent, and I have this baseline foundation information you provide, and say, help me to structure in a way to achieve this outcome. And then they'll go back and forth a bit on the planning with the agent first. Once they agree on the plan, they say, okay, now go ahead and execute, whether it's draft something or do the analysis the following. Then they actually do the verification, right? Looking at the output, looking at the inputs, look at the format, reviews it, maybe even condense it so there's better readability, and then providing it. So what's interesting is I think that personal assistant kind of feeling is actually enhancing folks to think more critically faster with an agent versus relying on to do things for you. I know we have about 3.5 minutes left. One thing I do want to do is open up the floor to ask questions, you know, for you guys to ask any questions you want. Okay, one in the back. There's a mic for you.
One quick question. A lot of my colleagues in the room are hearing a lot about AI. What are some of the low-hanging fruit operationally of things that we could implement? And the follow-up to that is, what are things that you've seen clients have made mistakes and pitfalls where you think that it's an easy operational thing to implement, but really there are issues? By way of example, we have a lease on some of our properties and we realize certain demographics specifically want to speak to this person when they're coming in the front door for the first time, and other demographics are fine with it. And you spoke about efficiencies and the young professionals, they're more than pleased not to speak to anybody. So what are some of the things you've learned from your clients and being in the process?
You guys want to start? Pitfalls in applying low-hanging fruits.
Yeah, I think on our side, one of the things is not really investing in the tasks that are left. You know, we take all these tasks off people's plate, and humans have a tendency to revert to what's comfortable and what they've traditionally done. You know, we're taking vendor credentialing off site, and then you go on site and you still see somebody locked away in an office credentialing vendors because that's just where their comfort level is. And so I think there has to be a lot of intentionality on what are the remaining tasks that humans are going to do, and how do we develop the teams to excel at those. You know, we recently went to a site and everybody was in their office. We're like, all right, we're getting rid of desks. We're getting rid of offices. It's the only thing that you can do on site now is service to real estate on site. Then you need to be out on the property. You need to be interfacing with residents. And obviously that's an extreme example. But I think it really highlights, you know, you have to train people to do what you want them to do with the time that they're getting back.
I'd say you're doing sort of exactly the right thing, which is you're talking to and understanding what's going on at properties. And if you're meeting a vendor, a lease AI or otherwise, who's saying, here's our solution, you know, this will work everywhere, good luck. I acknowledge exactly what you're saying. It doesn't work the same at every property. It doesn't work the same in every asset type. And as we've gone from where we started with conventional Class A to now Class B, Class C, student, affordable, all these different property types, we've learned that. And we still have a lot more to learn as a company, and I think the industry still has a lot more to learn. But if you approach it with that mindset, which it is not uniform, it shouldn't be the same everywhere, I think you will be a lot more successful with it. And that's what we try to do with our customers and partners.
Actually, one thing I'll build on Andrew's point, it's about, you can't just have a tool, implementing and expect it to work the way you want it to be, imagine it to be. And one thing that we do for HIFA is during the discovery process, we actually map out what we call a pre-HIFA world. It's like, how do you do things in your world today, beginning to end? Processes, handoffs, documents, systems. And then we come back and say, here's post-Haifa world, how that world will be simplified. Because throughout the process you map out the pre-Haifa world, you start realizing where the low-hanging fruits are, where you actually want to change, who should not be part of the picture, who should stay in the picture. Then therefore, when we have a conversation, you're much more informed about the future you want and how we can play in that role. So I think that's a very good exercise to do. All right, anyone else? Yes?
Thank you. I have a question for you. What would you say is the most time-consuming task, like low-hanging fruit for your teams that AI can solve?
Most time-consuming things that AI can solve?
Like the most time-consuming task that your teams have that AI can solve.
Yeah, I would say, I think data extraction is a really big one. I mean, we're looking at lots of different investment documents, whether it's an appraisal or a loan agreement or an offering memorandum, whether we're pulling financial data out of, somebody's P&L that they sent across to us. We want to standardize it or normalize it in a chart of accounts that makes sense to us. I think that is like the biggest lift. That's where we've spent the most time outsourcing work, frankly, and I think being able to leverage AI tools to help with that data ingestion and aggregation piece is huge. I also think it translates back to capital improvement work, and if you're aggregating invoices and you're looking at construction schedules and how do you pull data out of that information as well. So extraction is the low-hanging fruit for us, and that's where we've been spending a ton of resources. I think what we're starting to work on now is more analytics and analysis. And once the data is ultimately extracted, how could you make investment decisions more timely? So instead of having a user have to review a P&L that they just received from a borrower, how does the extraction into the database, ultimately using AI tools, allow you to produce an output so that you could inform investment decisions that way and not spend time on the low-hanging fruit when there's no problems, right? You skip over it, it hit the database and we're good, we move on to the next thing. Focus over here on this transaction because this one has some red flags and it's not a user and a report that somebody needs to pore over that's telling you that information.
Yeah, data extraction definitely is one. Actually, this is how we started, right? It used to take weeks to get like a long package of a couple thousand documents to be extracted and pulled in to set it up. Now it takes less than a day to do it. That's like a huge time saving for people, but also allows you to move beyond the setup piece, right? To do the investment decisions that you want to make. Okay, maybe do time one more.
Yes.
We're good. Any last words before we finish? Do you want to mention?
No. Thank you all for being here.
All right, awesome. Thank you, guys.